Okay. Well, I apologize for being a little bit late.
You're playing.
No. The Lieutenant Governor is Vice Chairman of the Great Lakes Commission, and I'm his alternate commissioner. And we had a board call today that lasted a little bit longer than it should have, but we were discussing the Executive Director's performance review, so I needed to stay there. Also, Lieutenant Governor couldn't make it because he's attending a funeral of yet another serviceman today, and so I had to make sure we filled that in. Upon contemplation of today's topic, sustainability in state government, I really wanted to explore trying maybe to do a teleconference, but I was afraid people would be telling me I was just phoning it in. But I'm here, and I apologize for taking up your time for being a little bit late. The one thing that we want to try to do today is talk about the Green Government Coordinating Council. We're going to talk about the efforts that we're taking place with that particular commission or group or task force, and then we'll also cover a number of other things with what the Lieutenant Governor is doing as far as water, sustainability, rain gardens, greening Main Street, and some of the other initiatives that we have on task. And I'm very fortunate to be working for the Lieutenant Governor. I feel that he's indeed a very interesting individual when it comes to state politics. We have a very entrepreneurial atmosphere in our office. It gives us a flexibility to do a number of different things. And as far as the environment team, which I am the head of, share that responsibilities with another person, we are fairly nimble in moving and doing different things. And so there are a lot of things that we could talk about. Primarily, though, when we're talking about sustainability in government, the Lieutenant Governor has encouraged us, and we all take the idea pretty seriously, that sustainability is something that needs to be part of our thinking every day. We need to be looking at our planning, how we're purchasing. We need to be thinking about how to be greener. And so that is a challenge from the Lieutenant Governor that he has given to his staff and through the Green Government Coordinating Council through state agencies. We talk a little bit about what that Coordinating Council is. It was first established by an executive order, which brought Lieutenant Governor as the chairman of that with 15 different agencies to work on green government, to build sustainability and environmental problem solving into state agencies. This year, we were able to get passed a bill that codifies that structure. So Lieutenant Governor's the chairman of the Green Government Coordinating Council, and is and now, because of that codification, it goes a little bit further than the executive order and has some teeth to it. So state agencies have to report to the Lieutenant Governor when it comes to green government. There are 70 different agencies in state government, and we are working with all of them to try to do projects and sustainability within 4 goals. And those 4 goals are increase green purchasing, to reduce pollution and waste. Also, we want to do something about green buildings. Some of our buildings are fairly old, are not quite as efficient, and not up to today's standards. What do we do about that? And also, what do we do about the future buildings? A fourth thing is, how do we promote green policies? And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. The Lieutenant Governor has been very active in this and has been hosting symposia throughout the year. We've already had this year our University Symposium, which was in August. We had our Green Communities Symposium, which was in October, and now we have coming up on December 11th our state agency or government symposium. We We don't need a very large group for that. Small groups are not encouraging unless you work for a state agency to sign up for that. But everything that we're going to talk about today can be found on a website, including the registration for any of our symposia. That is greensolutions.il.gov. And let me take a moment there to just say that there are a lot of things that can benefit anybody by going to Green Solutions website. State agencies, the universities, private citizens can all benefit from the information we've put up there. It's a lot of information. There's a lot of positive things that we all can be doing. Let me take a moment and take a breath and just kind of walked right in here. Can I see a show of hands for who works for the university here? Okay. That's all. State agencies. Wow. Okay. WMRC. Not WMRC. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for allowing me to understand my audience a little bit. All right. WMRC has done a lot of work, and with George and with Gary, on working on these green government solutions. So sustainability is built into all of that. We hope that you guys can take some of these things and apply them here. But I'm preaching to the choir now that I know most of the audience is from WMRC. So that might help me tailor this a little bit differently. But we'll go from there. As far as the Green Government Coordinating Council, we have put together annual reports on the progress. And, Illinois is not something, it's like a battleship. You don't just turn that thing on a dime. It takes a while. But the culture that we're starting to see permeate down through agencies is going to help do some positive things. Now, I wanted to maybe mention a few of these things in terms of those goals. There are some success stories that we should be able to talk about as far as the state government is concerned. As far as that first goal I mentioned, which is increased green purchasing, there are a number of things that have been done that are making a difference. Now, recycled content and paper and soy ink, those kind of things are fairly easy, but there are some other things that are being done that I think are very positive. We see at the Illinois EPA, they're purchasing low vapor, well, I've got the right crowd, low VOC adhesives for projects, building projects, and that's helping with some things. We've got one of the greenest fleets in the nation as far as vehicles. Something that really shocks me is that the state of Illinois cumulatively has bought 14 million gallons of biodiesel. Now what percentage of that I can't tell you. It could be 10, could be 11, could be 20. I doubt it, but it is up there. We have seen a number of other things that have come in that are fairly impressive. Central Management Services has launched a comprehensive green products database. Now, I haven't seen it yet, but I imagine it's probably similar to what this agency did in the 80s to get people together. But there's over 500 different entities that are a part of that database. So the green products database helps people find the suppliers for these products. And I think that's a significant thing. Something else is being done, too, in terms of purchasing and in terms of our environmental office environment, is that we're seeing more and more integrated pest management as part of this effort. So instead of coming in and just spraying for, well, whatever you might have without getting icky during lunch hour, we're seeing that people are doing more of the integrated pest management to cut down on costs and also to cut down on using those toxins within our work environment. There are some other examples here I just want to point out. It really is. I do have to have this in front of me because there are so many numbers on what some of these agencies are doing that it is helpful to have this. We're seeing the Department of Revenue using recycled paper increasing from 35 to 42%. And for all of you who are looking out for early retirement, all 450 million lottery tickets were printed on recycled paper. So we are making a difference in the green purchasing aspect. You've got soy ink, but the green fleet, I want to mention more of that as well. We've been making progress in terms of not only biodiesel but E85, and we can argue about whether or not that really makes a difference environmentally, but as far as our dependence on foreign oil, that helps a little, I would hope. And again, we can argue about that. But we have gone from a fleet that, well, let me just say this. We have an award-winning fleet here in the state of Illinois. It's something to be proud of. And we've actually, within the last year, gone from 14th to 10th nationally in terms of our green fleet. One of the things that we've done recently, and I participated in this with the Lieutenant Governor at the Farm Progress Show in Decatur this year, was the handing off of the keys for flex fuel hybrid vehicles. Only 20 of them are being made by Ford. The Ford Escape that can also use E85 in its hybrid vehicle. But we have 4 of them here in the state of Illinois. Where they're at, I don't know. We tried to get one, but unfortunately we didn't fall very high on that waiting list. But we are making strides in that regards, and the person who's in charge of the fleet is actually nationally recognized for her work, and we should be proud of that. But we've got a long way to go. In terms of all of this, we've got a long way to go when it comes to some of these things. One success story that we have here in Illinois, and it's regards to reducing pollution and waste, is that CMS has been working on collecting old computers and then recycling them responsibly. So the e-waste is another thing that we're doing very well here in Illinois that we should take credit for, and part of that's coming out of this Green Government Coordinating Council effort. But the company that's responsible for this is wiping those clean and then recycling the parts if they're not able to be used somewhere else. So those get reused. Another significant thing that I think is very important is under that third goal of facilitating green buildings. Now, connected here as you are to the University of Illinois, there are lots of opportunities for green buildings because the University of Illinois has a little bit more flexibility. But within the state of Illinois, it's one of the things that we're not doing very well is building green buildings for the state of Illinois. Universities, again, have that flexibility, but we're not addressing that issue, or we're not addressing that issue quite as well as we needed to as a state. The positive thing here is that within the last year, the Capital Development Board, which is in charge of the planning for these facilities, has instituted a green building task force that is able to provide guidelines for the state for green buildings. Now, they're trying to identify a number of different projects that could be following one of 3 ways to get green. The LEED certified building, there's a Department of Defense Sprint or iSpirit set of rules, but there's a third one also that the state's looking at. And so we're trying to green up our projects. Fortunately for me, because I reside in the Stratton office building, the Stratton building replacement is supposedly one of those projects that will be LEED certified, and hopefully it will be beyond the silver. The cleanup for that old building, though, is probably going to be very environmentally bad, but we'll just see how how we can undo the thinking from the 50s, I think is the key. So that is what's going on with the green building. I think there's also green leasing, which was a promising item to get us to lease greener buildings. So we're making progress with that. The fourth goal is one that seems easier when you hear it. As I mentioned before, promoting green policies. That's a little bit tougher to do in government. We can talk about where the rubber meets the road with the paper and recycled content, greening the state fair, and some other things. But promoting policies is one thing that's going to be harder to do to change the culture. One of our successes over the last year is the Green Fest that was in Chicago. DCEO, Illinois EPA, Department of Ag and Transportation all had a hand in Green Fest, which brought in 30,000 visitors in the McCormick Place Center to talk to vendors, hear over 200 speakers over a period of, I believe it was 3 or 4 days. And so it was a big deal to bring those people in to have them thinking about. And one of the keys, I will say with this, is that when we're talking about sustainability in government, we need to be bringing the key people in. You all understand that. And again, I'm preaching to the choir because most of you work for WMRC. Bringing the key people in to work on the planning, the purchasing, is how we do that. But culturally, you have to get to the right person in order to help make those changes. And so we hope that in the next several months we're able to do some of that, bring people in, and to do some of that planning and thinking. Greenfest was one way. A second way is part of our new mandate as the Green Government Coordinating Council. It has in it many steps which get agencies to commit to this sustainability way of thinking. There's a sustainability guide that we have created and a plan which is required by all state agencies. So within the next several months, I believe the deadline is February, agencies are going to be required to take a template that we've worked on as a committee and to turn that into a plan for each of the agencies. And we hope to be able to say by the beginning of March that we have all 70 agencies with a plan on how to be sustainable in government. So again, if you're interested in that kind of work, a lot of work has gone into that already. We anticipated having the bill signed by August 1st and start working on this. We anticipated that and had people working on the plan, the template, to bring people together on that, borrowing from other states, coming together and working on that. And so we were ready to go. And then we had a little bit of a snafu, the mandatory veto of the bill, which was overridden, and so we're back to where we were, but we lost some time. But February will be when we work that deadline through, and we should be able to meet that. If you are going to be working on that plan, it might be a good idea to come to that December 11th symposium in Springfield at the DNR building, because they will be able to work through the elements of that plan and help the agencies with the requirements. So that's part of what we're trying to do with that. So those are some of the highlights of those goals. But we also have some other things that we do besides Green Government Coordinating Council. The Lieutenant Governor has been very active, and in his time in office, the 5 years we've had, we've really expanded the roles of the Lieutenant Governor's office. It has been tremendous. Just from what I was brought in to do, my specialty is river conservation and water policy, and we started out with the Illinois River Coordinating Council. Well, now here we are just a short 3.5 years after I started, and we have a Mississippi River Coordinating Council and a Wabash, Ohio Rivers Coordinating Council. And already he's tripled his workload on rivers alone. And we have the Green Government Coordinating Council, the Biofuels Task Force. There are other task forces that I won't go into, but there are a number of things that we've done. I want to share some of these with you because we can all benefit from some of these. We have a website called IllinoisCarpool.org, which helps state employees find rides so that they can cut down on the amount of fuel oil that we're using for these trips. Fortunately, I didn't have anybody coming over here today from me, but or else we would have brought some. We also have a Sustainable University Compact, also part of the Green Solutions website. We have 27 universities and community colleges that have signed on to a 12-point principle plan to be greener. Again, universities have the flexibility because of the way they're governed to be a little bit more agile and flexible, but this compact helps them think about renewable energy. We've got the University of Illinois and others thinking about wind and solar. Northern Illinois University has a solar collector to heat swimming pools. There are other examples of things that can be done there, but that helps get them thinking about that. Again, it's getting the right people thinking about these things to get the plans put in place. We also have a rain garden program which helps with stormwater. Rain gardens are a great way to reduce flooding and improve water quality. We can turn an area of the lawn into a natural native oasis, more or less, for butterflies or other wildlife if it's large enough. And also just visually appealing. Rain gardens are fantastic for that. Think about what it does for us as far as sustainability. In addition to not taxing the local community's storm sewer system or combined sewer overflows, we also can cut down on the amount of mowing that's needed, so we reduce maintenance costs. All of these things do a great job of working towards the other goal, which is reducing costs. And we've all been going through that process of trying to reduce the amount of money we spend as agencies, but a lot of these things are saving a lot of money that can be put back into other programs or even salaries, perhaps. Greening Main Street is another idea that Lieutenant Governor has, and this is part of bringing that sustainability into all the other programs. Main Street is a program where we're trying to revitalize downtown areas, and Lieutenant Governor feels very strongly that they too should also be sustainable. So in competing with here it's the North Prospect type of development, we want to make sure we're infilling back in town, and we want to do that within sustainable principles. And so Greening Main Street Guide is something we've developed to help Main Street, the 60 communities that are involved in Main Street, think about sustainability, become environmentally friendly, and to do that infilling in a smart and sustainable way. We've also launched another campaign which has concluded, unfortunately, but I think can work on some of the issues we're talking about. We have 6 weeks to a greener Illinois. There's an education campaign where we gave out ideas on how to green your own personal choices and to use mass transit and brown bag lunch and other sorts of things like that that were sent out through our emails and through our email list that had a lot of positive feedback. The program again is on Green Solutions website, and we encourage you to do that. Other things that we can talk about. There's one thing I left off in my notes there. This year we had a bill passed through the legislature with enormous support. It's called the Green Cleaning Schools Act. What that means is that any secondary and primary school will need to implement a policy and start purchasing products to have more environmentally and health-friendly products used in the school for cleaning. We are now developing the guidelines for that. The bill gave us a short turnaround, I think, of 120 days total for the whole process. But we're working with 14 different agencies, regional offices of education, the Department of Public Health, and Illinois EPA included in those 14 agencies, to develop guidelines so that schools can go out and purchase more environmentally friendly products and use them in cleaning the facilities. Now, some things are you're just not able to change. Cafeteria, got a set of rules for those. The nurse's office, how you deal with bodily fluids, that's something else you just can't deal with. But everything else is open for interpretation under our guidelines, and we're working on that now. One thing that's really significant nationally from one of the groups that we've been working with on this, 14 million days, school days, are lost every year because of health related to asthma. That's school children missing school, cumulatively 14 million days a year because of asthma and other things. These kind of products can help us reduce that and provide a healthier environment, because we can knock down that potential for a child to miss a day of school because they're having an asthma-related attack. And so that's the real positive thing here. We have a lot of work to do with this, and there's a lot of really interesting things. The number of distributors calling our office has gone up probably 50-fold. And how do you manage all those people competing? It makes it for very interesting governing. But we have the opportunity to do this, and we're very happy to have worked on it. One other thing I want to mention as far as this goes, Gary, you've been involved with this, is that right? You're one of the, what committee do you have? Procurement or? Product policy. So you guys got one of the best experts involved, and we're very happy to have that.
Marc, I might add that I think that
Thanks.
draft guidelines are coming out for public comment about the end of this month, if I remember right. So you might look at the agenda and decide if you're interested in making comment on it.
We will probably have that up online hopefully by Wednesday. The guidelines. I mean, we're cutting it close, but we're probably extend that a little bit. But that is the opportunity. Let's see. Well, I've touched upon everything I had highlighted. Perhaps we have any questions or discussion. Very informal with the talking points. So, is there anything you want to discuss? Yes, sir.
I have tons of questions, but I throw a couple of them. Number one, first of all, congratulations, because it's great that the state is taking the lead on this. Are there any guidelines for consumers that, let's say I want to buy a green product, let's say cleaning agent, how can I be sure that what I'm purchasing is really green? I mean, remember 10 years ago when people would be organic produce. And there was a lot of questions whether I'm really buying organic products. So is the state anything doing to educate the consumers to be in a position to really, if they're buying something, really green product, not something that is, that's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, what are the cost elements here? I mean, if you go to grocery stores again, I mean, there are organic foods and there are some of these green products, but they're definitely more expensive. How does the state is integrating the costs into this situation? And number three, what are you guys doing with the K-12 education that hopefully the younger generation, they bring up with, you talk with the culture, and you're right. I mean, people like my age or maybe younger people here is difficult to change, but the K through 12 through education, hopefully they can get that cultural habit that the sustainability requires.
Okay. Excellent questions, and thanks for that. As far as the first question, which was how do consumers tell the difference apart? One of the things that I've learned from my experiences with the Lieutenant Governor's office is that in terms of technology or providing different things, we really should be neutral about the consumer products unless they're unhealthy. And so the difference between organic or natural certified or do we want to go with LEED certified or something else? We should probably try to be neutral on those standards, but encourage them. And so as far as products, whether you go with something from Earth Friendly or something from another producer, we should leave that up to the consumer unless there's something terribly wrong that needs to be fixed about those guidelines. So,
but my question is that does the state is going to have a program that they certify that these products are in fact green, not somebody, let's say, in China or India or Bangladesh has produced this and we don't know what they are?
Right. In terms of the green schools, I think that's probably kind of what we're getting at here a lot, is that we don't we don't suggest that you have to go with the Green Seal program or something else. We just say you have to come up with the school has to come up with your own guidelines for how to meet our standards, and then they determine how to do that. Your second question was on cost. In terms of the state, I think most of these can be justified because you're, let's say, a green building. A green building is going to be 20 to 30% more expensive. But over the long term, the energy savings are going to be in the millions and will eventually save the state money. So we have to invest that money. In terms of the schools, the Green Cleaning Schools Act, we have an opportunity to get the schools moving in that direction, but they can opt out. So if it's more expensive and it's a problem for the school to be buying those products, then they can opt out of the program. The third question, I believe, was education of the younger generation, or just consumers in general. We have been working on, through the symposia, through the websites, through these, through the bully pulpit, if you would, from the Lieutenant Governor's office, the sustainability idea and directing them to resources. And so we're providing that. I think that's part of it. But I'm not entirely certain that we can, mandate. Well, we could mandate some kind of education in the schools, but I think there are a number of different curricula out there that do that already, and so we just hope that the opportunity to educate the janitors and the administrators will kind of trickle through the system and make schools healthier, not only in the environment, but also providing that message to them. John?
You know if any of the agencies are looking at some of the issues about home and lawn care in relation to asthma and just sustainability, like what's happening to bees, for example. Almost every year you get inundated by chemical companies and lawn care companies that want to take care of your lawn. And when I was talking to them, some of them, they're putting fertilizer down, which is laced with a herbicide and a pesticide. And it basically is making the soil an unhealthy media for any insect that traditionally would turn the soil over. And limits the number of plants that will grow here. Any going in those directions?
Our office, Lieutenant Governor's office, is looking into some of those things. We've been looking at phosphorus as a water pollutant, so I'm going to go out at that angle, John. One of the things that we were successful this past year is getting phosphorus in automatic dishwashing detergent reduced to trace amounts, and we're going to be phasing that in by the year 2010, July 1st, 2010. That was a significant improvement, and I think that we're going to be focusing on lawn care next, but I can't tell you for certain at this point. But I think there's an opportunity there to look at the practices, and kind of like we're talking about integrated pest management, maybe we need to be making sure that lawn care chemical companies are doing the same. But there's an opportunity for that, and we probably should explore that. But we are starting to look at some of those elements. And in terms of the bee spotter program, I think that what's going on here at the University of Illinois, they have a tremendous program. They're trying to bring a National Science Foundation grant in for a bee center. They already have the bee genome project. I think there's a lot of things there that should concern us, and these are the indicator species for a lot of those problems that John was talking about. What is it? Is it could be a number of different things, but pesticide use and the other environmental factors are definitely causing some problems with the bees and our pollinators. So, John, I hope that answered your question. I tried to tap dance around some things. All right. Anyone else? Gary?
I had a couple things. One is, I think I read recently that the state trying to, or has proposed a draft, I think it's a carbon policy. I think that's got Director Whitefield led that effort. Could you tell us a little bit more about that in terms of what is the state's policy looking like in that area?
Sure. Gary's the title for that is the Illinois Climate Change Advisory Group, which the Lieutenant Governor was appointed to. Director Scott has done a great deal of work, a very impressive amount of work on this, and the advisory group, which consisted of environmental groups, people like myself, industry folks, unions, car companies, farming. Well, there's a whole, if there's a lobbyist, they were there. But you also had a number of environmental and state agency types. And the conversations went back and forth, but what came out of that were a number of recommendations that the state could proceed with. And so right now, as we went through that process, the committee voted on them as a whole, including some controversial topics that weren't quite unanimous, such as cap and trade, emissions trading, tougher cafe standards on cars, some other things like that were.
Wasn't it similar to California car standards?
That's right.
For Illinois?
That's right. Illinois EPA is now looking at those and producing a report for the governor's office. That's the next step. From there, I believe that the governor's office will take that piece of work and then turn that into legislative items that will then be announced throughout the spring. And so this next spring, you can get past some of the issues from last spring, we'll be able to work on climate change and move some of these items forward. Some of them might take longer to come around. I think that cap and trade for Illinois might be a little much right away, but we hope that there's enough progressive things there to tackle a bit at a time and move us off. And with a number of these ideas, with a $100 barrel of oil, they're going to end up saving the state money too to move on those. I imagine that low-hanging fruit will be acted on first. That will have some cost savings as well. Let me point out Justin from Senator Frericks' office. I didn't see you when I mentioned the Wabash Ohio Rivers Coordinating Council, but Senator Frericks sponsored that bill. So Senator Frericks is very, very green, and I look forward for him and his early part of his career to do a lot of positive things. So if you don't know him,
I just wanted to mention one more bill that Senator Frericks sponsored that passed the session was a bill requiring the state, when awarding contracts, to give preference to bidders that use bio-based products.
Yep. There's a lot of good bills out there that I didn't mention. Compact fluorescent lighting is now required. The state is recycling the mercury out of the lights. That's something else that's very positive. Let's see, what else did I forget?
Well, let me just mention a couple things, Mark. One is the program that the Lieutenant Governor has runs from the very top in terms of strategy, in terms of policy, to a very grassroots, very basic level. And so a lot of these, particularly in terms of education, Lieutenant Governor has been involved in a lot of school groups, has been involved with the state fair, strong education initiative, particularly with green purchasing, with green practices, recycling, and so forth. On the very top level, the bill that was passed, House Bill 86, or Senate Bill 86, established the Green Government Council under law. One of the very important things under that, Mark mentioned, is that every department and agency has to come up with a sustainability plan. Now, that's not a dormant plan. Within 1 year, they have to report on that, and they have to look at what changes they're going to make in their sustainability plan for the coming year. And so that's something that has really changed focus at a large number of agencies. The other is Lieutenant Governor is excellent at jawboning, and one of the areas that he addressed very early on was energy consumption by the state, and how do we look at that? How do we make adjustments? How do we reduce that and establish policy? Well, one of the things was there was very little data available on energy use, and CMS led contracts, but largely those were very large contracts, but there were no data collected in any central location that would say we're using more energy here than on average, less energy here, and so forth. That, after I would say 5 years of jawboning, is now beginning to come in place, where these databases are being put in place. And it's largely through jawboning that this ended up coming in place. One of the other areas in terms of green procurement, CMS, again, I think strongly through Lieutenant Governor's insistence, if you will, went into green leases. The state leases a significant amount of property. And so earlier this year, the first green lease was put in place. Well, what's a green lease? Green lease requires, obviously, energy efficiency, temperature efficiency, and so forth, but it also requires things like the construction must be of both recycled and recyclable materials. And the owner of the building who ups to the green lease has to also agree to things like recycling and other activities which are very important in terms of public policy. And so there's a lot of efforts from top to bottom that have really taken place, and a lot of grassroots effort, which is where I think sustainability really gets its boost. And that I think has been excellent. And it's been our pleasure, Gary's pleasure. I sit on a number of panels, but one of them we just finished up was the procurement of services for the recycling of compact or fluorescent for the collection of mercury and taking that mercury out of the environment. So a lot of very interesting things happening.
Thanks, George.
I just did, on the Green Schools project, been a real interesting experience, but in perspective perspective, there's a lot of states working in this area. So it's not like we're doing something in isolation. So we've looked at what other states are doing so that, say, vendors in Illinois don't have to do something different than in all the other states. And also the draft guidelines are trying to take advantage of what I call market forces that are moving towards more and more demand for green products. And that's a rapidly evolving field. In other words, what is green product today might not really be green 3 years from now because the technology, the chemistry is improving all the time. So we're trying to develop policies that are flexible and also evolve over time so that we're not locking in place buying green products that really aren't green anymore after a short period of time. So anyway, we're trying to devise systems in Illinois that move the marketplace forward and are give Illinois, aggressive green policies at the same time, but also make it relatively easy for people that are doing procurement to identify what to procure. Because in the end, you can devise all the policies you want, but if people can't buy the stuff, they can't figure out how to buy it, then you're not really accomplishing very much. So anyway, I think there's a lot of exciting things going on in the state of Illinois and as we work with other states.
And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I applaud everything that you're doing. It's great stuff, and I'm a fan of that Quinn for a good reason, I think. I'd like to ask a question about looking outside the buildings and so forth, about other aspects of greening Illinois and things like developing linear parks as corridors along the rivers. We've got something that started, it's Kankakee State Park, but the people of Illinois are kind of park deprived, and the buffers of the rivers in many places are not very effective. They're too small. I'll let you answer that question. That's a big question to start with.
Oh, certainly. We are park deprived, especially in East Central Illinois, but I think that for what we have in the state, also too, we're 48th out of 50th in the states as far as public lands. So there are many, many other states that have more public lands than Illinois, and that's always been an issue. And we're always looking for opportunities, but given the culture of private property here in Illinois, it's difficult to get to something else. So you have to really work hard to identify opportunities. Bike trails are one of those opportunities. One of the things that recently happened with the opening of the I-355 extension is that some of the easements will be available to local park districts to create bike trails along the tollway. So I think that you have to really look and look hard for that. When the state was formed, as opposed to our neighbor to the north in Wisconsin, the commercial economic interest in rivers here in Illinois was, could you float a barge on it? So everything that was, you could float a barge at the time, Abraham Lincoln time, and before, you could float a barge on it, then that was public lands. So the river bed itself was held in public trust. Now, in northern Wisconsin, they had a little bit different. You might well look at Wisconsin and Madison and think that they're so much more progressive, but really the needs were different in Wisconsin that makes them different. And I'll get back to the linear park idea. In Wisconsin, you needed to float logs in the creation of the state, in the beginning of the statehood, in order for economic progress, because you had to cut down the northern Wisconsin forest and then ship those to market, and you use streams for that. So if you float a log, then that was held in public trust and wasn't deeded out to private property. Wisconsin is set up now so where they can do more of that, because that land is typically, you have more canoe trails, you have more public access. Just in terms of economic dollars spent on bird watching, fishing, and hunting, I think there's a threefold increase over what we spend or can have economic inputs here. $4 billion of economic inputs on those activities here in Illinois is $12 billion. in Wisconsin. But back to the opportunities. We have got to identify and be very smart about how to create new parks. In terms of lands, I'm working on a project right now where somewhere in Illinois, I can't tell you where, we're looking at creating a fish and wildlife refuge. But it's going to be dependent on 1 or 2 or 3 developers taking it right off and turning their land over. It's very promising, but those opportunities don't come along every day. And in terms of the linear park ideas, which are important for a number of different reasons, not only recreation and public access, but in terms of climate change, as species are going to migrate around to adapt to a new climate paradigm, they're going to have to be able to move. And so these linear parks are great for that. And we need them. Again, I keep going back to Wisconsin, but they were creating parklands along Lake Michigan in order to help for that very thing, is to create linear parks that would be able to help species migrate. But we are looking in terms of opportunities for bikes. Where our office actually helped submit a national grant to create more bike trails last year. Unfortunately, the funding was turned down. So we're always looking for those opportunities. But if you all have an idea for that, then I would love to hear it, because the Lieutenant Governor gets very excited when we can find new ways to get people outdoors and to get them exercising. There are a number of other initiatives we can talk about. It was briefly mentioned Walk Across Illinois, where we try to encourage people to get out and walk 167 miles. There are other opportunities like that, and he believes very strongly that our children are growing up with nature deficit disorder and not getting outdoors enough. So we meld all these things together, and we can just throw all these ideas together and mix them around and see what comes out. But please do. You had a second question.
Well, it's another very big question in my mind, and that is exotics in the Great Lakes and rails versus, ships going up the Illinois River into the Great Lakes and coming up around Niagara. Some of the economic analyses that I've heard about say that rails would be way cheaper than subsidizing port work and all of that. And certainly you could start to deal with, certainly prevent future exotics, and maybe have a little greater chance of dealing with the ones that are already there. That would take some real leadership and some real, some economic analysis to show the producers that they'd be better off with rail than with the current high maintenance systems that we have.
Well, I'm not sure how to respond to that statement, but I will say that in terms of subsidies, if we were to remove all of these and let them compete based purely on market factors, I think we would see a lot different world. But I think we've been working very hard on the cart barrier on the Chicago Sanitary Canal to prevent. It was originally created to keep round gobies from coming down into the Illinois Mississippi River, but it's actually now good for keeping carp from moving up into the Great Lakes. But ballast water on the ocean-going vessels in the Great Lakes is a serious problem. We've got court challenges to NPDES because basically it's biological pollution coming from point sources. So does the Clean Water Act apply? The Great Lakes Commission is working on that. I think that's a good avenue for our state, working with the Great Lakes Governors Conference to address some of those issues in Washington. Ultimately, the real answer for Illinois is to sever that connection between Lake Michigan and the Illinois River. I don't anticipate any politicians saying that anytime soon, but go ahead, please.
Do the rail first.
Save me. Do the rails first.
I mean, I don't think you're going to get them to go along until the see if something is there that's more attractive to them than the
Yeah.
current system that
Yeah.
I
Well,
agree, it's political, it's not very technical.
right. Well, I think this battle's been going on for 150 years, really. And so, where do you get that subsidizing for that and taking away and having that discussion? We can talk more about that later. Some of you all have to get to work.
I just want to make a comment that I'm a chemical engineer, so you look at sustainability from a chemical engineering angle. You really have to look at the life cycle assessment, which means that you have to look at the resource consumption, environmental impact, and cost. Both you and George mentioned something, but this, just an example, mercury from the thermometer. Then you have to look at, what was the environmental impacts of people collecting this, driving it, resource. I guess my point is that, and I want to go back to the first question I asked, that a lot of these green products that somebody may manufacture, somebody should really look very carefully that, yes, you make a green product, but at what cost? The resource consumption cost, environmental impact, and all other things. And my concern is that there are enough smart people here and other places that they can make these green products and fool the consumers and state and federal agencies and sell a product that is green when you use it. But when you look at how it was produced, it was not a green technology because they didn't look at the life cycle assessment part of it, which is a very important aspect of the whole sustainability. Mm-hmm. So I hope that the state look at that carefully because I think it's really important.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that if we have resources are scarce for a lot of studies of this type, and so that's really the question. What can we do with what we have as part of our consideration? But I think that's very interesting, and I think we'll keep that in mind.
Let's give Marc a round.
Oh.
Marc, as a token, we have the sustaintainability school for you.
Well, thank you very much.
For talking to us here today, and I'm sure Marc will be glad to talk to anybody if they've got a few questions. Absolutely, and I have business cards here for anybody who wants to take those with you. If you may have the conversation later, if you need to get back to work. So, thank you, George. Thank you.